If you live in a flat in England or Wales, I have some terrifying news for you. You do not own your home. You might have a mortgage. You might have a deed with your name on it. You might have paid $500,000 for the keys. But legally, you are nothing more than a glorified tenant with a very expensive long-term rental contract. You are a leaseholder, and in the eyes of the law, you are sitting on a wasting asset that is slowly bleeding value every single day you sleep in it. Right now, millions of people are trapped in a system that dates back to the Domesday Book. To understand the trap, you have to understand the lie. When you buy a freehold house, you own the bricks, the land, and the sky above it forever. When you buy a leasehold flat, you own time. You have purchased the right to occupy a space for a set number of years, 99, 125, maybe 999, but the clock is always ticking. Every morning you wake up, your asset is worth slightly less than it was the night before. This is what economists call a wasting asset. And here is the kicker. When that clock hits zero, the property goes back to the freeholder. You get nothing, zero. The $500,000 you paid evaporates. Now, you might say, but I have a 125-year lease. I'll be dead by then. That's true. But the financial system doesn't wait for zero. The moment your lease drops below 80 years, a trapdoor opens. It's called marriage value. Historically, this meant that to extend your lease, you had to pay 50% of the increase in the property's value to the freeholder. It was a ransom payment that could cost tens of thousands of pounds. The government promised to abolish this. And in the 2024 Act, they legally did. But did the freeholders accept that? Of course not. Throughout 2025, a coalition of major freeholders and pension funds launched a massive judicial review in the High Court. Their argument? That abolishing marriage value was a breach of their human rights. They argued that the government was stealing their property, which is actually your home's value, without full compensation. For months, the entire reform package hung in the balance. In October 2025, the High Court finally dismissed their claim. It was a massive victory. The judge ruled that the reforms were lawful and that the public interest in ending this feudal extortion outweighed the freeholders' profit margins. But here is what they aren't telling you. Implementation is stuck in the mud. While the Act is law, the secondary legislation, the complex charts and graphs that actually determine how much you pay to extend your lease, is still being fought over. The valuation methodology is currently a chaotic mess, creating uncertainty for everyone trying to sell or extend right now. So, while the law says you are safe, the market is still pricing in the risk. But marriage value is just the long-term threat. There is a much more immediate poison in the system: ground rent. For centuries, ground rent was a peppercorn, literally a single peppercorn, or a few pounds a year. It was symbolic. But in the last 2 decades, developers got greedy. They started selling flats with doubling ground rent clauses. These clauses say your ground rent starts at $250, but doubles every 10 years. It gets darker. Under English law, if you owe your freeholder more than $350 in ground rent or service charges, they can apply to the court for forfeiture. This is the nuclear option. If successful, they don't just take the $350 you owe. They take the flat. They seize the asset, evict you, and keep the equity. Imagine losing a $400,000 apartment because of a dispute over a $400 cleaning bill. It sounds medieval because it is medieval. It is a holdover from a time when lords owned the land and serfs worked it. The 2024 Act promised to end this. It promised to raise the threshold and add protections, but the mechanism is still there in the background, a sword of Damocles hanging over every dispute. It is the ultimate power imbalance. You can withhold rent from a landlord if they don't fix the boiler, but if you withhold service charges from a freeholder, you risk losing the entire asset. This brings us back to the core lie. Ownership. In the UK, we're obsessed with getting on the ladder. We are told that renting is dead money. But leasehold is renting. It is just renting with a massive upfront payment and a 125-year contract. You still have a landlord. You still have to ask permission to paint the front door. You still have to ask permission to keep a pet. You still have to pay for the upkeep of the building, but you have zero say in who does the work or how much it costs. You have all the risks of ownership, paying for repairs, with none of the freedom of ownership. Control. It is the worst of both worlds, and the world is waking up to it. The Commonhold movement, which we will discuss in Part 3, is gaining traction because people are realizing that the English system is an outlier. In Australia, they have strata title. In America, they have condominiums. In Scotland, they have a form of common ownership. Only in England and Wales do we persist with this feudal relic, where a third-party investor owns the ground under your feet and trades your home like a poker chip. Welcome back. In Part 1, we exposed the feudal roots of leasehold and the wasting asset trap. But if ground rent is the silent killer, service charge is the violent mugging. Right now, across the UK, leaseholders are opening envelopes that contain bills for $4,000, $6,000, even $8,000 a year. These aren't for luxury penthouses with swimming pools. These are for standard flats in blocks with broken lifts and uncleaned corridors. The freeholders, seeing their ground rent income threatened by the new laws, have shifted their focus. They have weaponized the service charge. It is the blank check of the housing market. And you are the one signing it. Let's look at the reality on the ground. In 2025, The Guardian exposed a development where residents were charged over $2,200 for a lamp test and repair. Think about that. $2,000 to check if a light bulb works. At the same block, they were charged $1,218 to replace 14 light bulbs. That is $87 per bulb. This isn't inflation, this isn't labor costs, this is theft disguised as administration. When you challenge these costs, the freeholder or their managing agent hides behind a wall of opacity. They send you complex spreadsheets, they charge you an administration fee just to reply to your email. In one case, a resident named Alfie was charged an $80 fee just for receiving a payment demand on Christmas Day. When he couldn't pay the spiraling costs, he was forced to leave the UK and rent his flat out at a loss. This is the human cost of the scandal. People are being driven to the brink of bankruptcy by bills they cannot control and cannot predict. But the most insidious part of the service charge isn't the light bulbs, it's the insurance. Freeholders arrange the building's insurance for the block. You, the leaseholder, pay for it. But for years, freeholders and managing agents have been taking massive secret commissions from the insurance companies. Here is how it works. The freeholder goes to an insurer and says, "I have 100 blocks of flats. I will place the insurance with you, but I want a 40% commission." The insurer says, "Fine," and inflates the premium by 40% to cover the bribe. You get a bill that is 40% higher than the market rate. The freeholder pockets the difference. It is a kickback scheme that would be illegal in almost any other financial sector. The government promised to ban this. The new regulations in August 2025 set out rules to increase transparency. But the industry is adapting. Instead of commissions, they are now charging insurance administration fees or claims handling fees. They simply renamed the bribe. Property Mark, the industry body, has warned that transparency reforms alone won't bring down premiums. The root cause, the conflict of interest where the person arranging the insurance isn't the person paying for it, remains unresolved. The scandal is even worse for those in affordable housing or shared ownership. These are often the most vulnerable buyers, nurses, teachers, key workers, who bought a 25% share of a flat because it was the only way to stay in their city. But, the politicians say, you can challenge these costs at the tribunal. This is the first-tier tribunal, property chamber. It is supposed to be the leaseholders' court, but it is a broken shield. First, it takes months, sometimes years, to get a hearing. Second, the legal costs can be enormous. And here is the twist. Often, the lease allows the freeholder to recharge their legal costs back to the leaseholders via the service charge. So you sue your landlord for overcharging you. You win, and then you get a bill for the landlord's lawyers who fought against you. The 2024 Act promised to scrap the presumption that leaseholders pay legal costs. This is a vital change. But until it is fully tested in the courts, freeholders will try every trick in the book to claw that money back. An analysis of tribunal rulings in 2024 found that residents were overcharged in more than 70% of cases. Think about that stat. 70% of the time, the bill you received was wrong. If a supermarket overcharged you 70% of the time, they would be shut down. In the leasehold sector, it's a business model. Then there is the dreaded Section 20 notice. This is the letter that lands on your doormat, telling you that major works are needed. The roof needs fixing, the windows need replacing, the cladding needs to come off, and the bill? $20,000 per flat, payable in 30 days. Under the law, the freeholder has to consult you. But consultation is a farce. They send you a letter, you send back an objection, and they ignore it and hire their brother-in-law's scaffolding company anyway. We have seen service charges for housing associations rise by 15.8% to nearly $2 billion in a single year. The system encourages gold plating. If the freeholder can spend $100,000 of your money and take a 10% management fee on top, why would they try to spend $50,000? The incentive is perverse. The more they spend, the more they make. The government's answer is transparency. The 2024 Act mandates a standardized service charge accounts format. It forces landlords to provide annual reports. This sounds good. You get to see where the money went. But seeing the theft doesn't stop the theft. Knowing that you paid $87 for a light bulb does not put the money back in your pocket if the tribunal system is too expensive to access. Transparency is necessary, but it is not sufficient. What leaseholders need is control. They need the power to fire the managing agent. They need the power to veto expensive works. The Act expands the right to manage, RTM, making it easier for leaseholders to take over. It increased the non-residential limit from 25% to 50%, meaning more mixed-use blocks, flats above shops, can now claim RTM. This is a glimmer of hope. If you can take control, you can stop the rot. But for many, especially in massive, complex developments, organizing 50% of residents is impossible. For them, the service charge remains a tax they have no vote on. We have covered the lease trap. We have covered the service charge heist. Now we have to talk about the end game, the sale, because eventually you will want to move. You will want to upsell, downsize, or move for work. And that is when the trap snaps shut for good. Right now, the UK property market is developing a two-tier system. Tier 1, freehold houses and share of freehold flats. These are selling. Tier 2, leasehold flats with high ground rents or aggressive management companies. These are becoming toxic assets. 78% of estate agents now report that leasehold properties with escalating ground rents are struggling to sell. Buyers are waking up. Solicitors are terrified of being sued for negligence, so they are warning clients, do not buy this. Banks are refusing to lend. If you own one of these flats, you are sitting on an asset that might technically be worth $300,000, but has a liquidity value of 0. You cannot access the equity because you cannot find a buyer. So what is the solution? Is there an escape? Yes, it is called Commonhold. This is the system used in the rest of the world. In a Commonhold, there is no freeholder. There is no landlord. You own your flat forever, the unit, and you own a share of the rest of the building, the common parts, collectively with your neighbours. You form a Commonhold association. You vote on the budget. You decide if the roof needs fixing. You decide who insures the building. No third-party investor skimming 40% off the top. No ground rent. No forfeiture. It sounds perfect. It was actually introduced in the UK in 2002, but in 20 years, fewer than 20 Commonhold developments were built. Why? Because developers hate it. Developers make millions selling the freehold to pension funds after they sell the flats to you. It is a second bite of the cherry. Commonhold denies them that bonus, so the market boycotted it. The Labour government has promised to fix this. They have committed to banning the sale of new leasehold flats and making Commonhold the default tenure. This is the nuclear option that housing campaigners have been waiting for. The Leasehold and Commonhold Reform Bill is expected later in 2025. If this passes, it will change everything. It will stop the creation of new victims. But what about the 5 million existing leaseholders? The danger is that we create a zombie market. If all new flats are Commonhold, superior title, full ownership, who will want to buy your second-hand leasehold flat, inferior title, feudal restrictions? Your existing leasehold flat could become like a Betamax tape in a VHS world. Obsolete, devalued. The only way to save existing leaseholders is to make conversion easier. Currently, you need 100% agreement from every flat owner to convert to Commonhold. That is impossible. The government promises to lower this threshold, maybe to 50% or 75%, but it hasn't happened yet. Until it does, the existing stock is at risk of being left behind. So you are in the trap. What do you do? Here is your survival guide based on the legal landscape in late 2025. 1. If you are buying, the golden rule: avoid leasehold if you can. Look for share of freehold or the rare Commonhold. Check the lease length. Do not buy anything under 90 years. The marriage value trap kicks in at 80. Even though the new act abolishes it in theory, the valuation uncertainty means you could be buying a lawsuit. The ground rent audit. Demand to see the lease. If the ground rent is more than 0.1% of the value, or if it doubles every 10 years, walk away. Do not listen to the agent saying you can buy an indemnity policy. Just walk away. Service charge history. Ask for the last 3 years of service charge accounts. Look for the trend. Is it going up 10% a year? Is there a reserve fund? If the reserve fund is empty, you're about to get a bill. If you are selling, extend now. If your lease is hovering near 80 years, extend it now. The new act removes the 2-year ownership rule. You used to have to own the flat for 2 years to extend. Now you can do it immediately. A long lease, 990 years, makes the property sellable. Fix the ground rent. If you have a doubling clause, you must vary the lease before you list. Most buyers' solicitors will block the sale otherwise. It will cost you legal fees, but it is the price of exit. 3. If you are staying, right to manage. RTM. This is your best weapon. Gather your neighbours. You now only need 50% participation, and the Act allows mixed-use blocks, up to 50% commercial, to qualify. Taking control of the management doesn't stop the service charge, but it stops the theft. You choose the insurer. You choose the cleaner. The Section 20 hawk. Watch your post. If a Section 20 notice arrives, organize immediately. Challenge the scope, challenge the cost. Use the new transparency rights to demand the invoices. The Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024 was a step forward. The abolition of marriage value, confirmed by the High Court, is a victory. The ban on new leasehold houses is a victory, but it is not the revolution we were promised. The feudal system hasn't been abolished, it has just been regulated. The freeholders are still there. The service charge accounts are still opaque. The forfeiture threat still exists. You still don't own your home. The true revolution will only come with Commonhold. Until we join the rest of the civilized world and allow people to own their flats outright, the British property market will remain a trap. Feudalism never ended. It just got a mortgage, and you are the one paying it.